There was a time when they believed in forevers, not the kind you see in movies or read about in books, but the kind that lives in the space between two people who understand each other without trying. Yoongi and Jimin existed in that space like it was built for them. Like the universe had carved out a corner of reality where nothing could touch them. They were 17 when it started, though neither of them could tell you the exact moment it became something more than friendship. Maybe it was the night Jimin fell asleep on Yoongi's shoulder during the train ride home. Or maybe it was the morning Yagurni realized he'd been saving songs on his phone just because they reminded him of Jimin's smile. Time moved differently back then. Days felt longer because they were filled with meaning, with glances that lasted half a second but echoed for hours afterward. They had this routine. Every Thursday after practice, they'd walk to the convenience store 3 blocks away, buy 2 iced coffees and whatever snacks were on sale, then sit on the curb outside, like they owned the whole city. Jimin would talk about everything and nothing, his voice animated and bright, hands moving through the air like he was painting pictures only Yoongi could see. And Yoongi would listen. Really listen, not just to the words, but to the spaces between them. To the way Yemin's laugh would catch sometimes when he was trying too hard to seem okay. To the moments when his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. That's what love looked like for them. Not grand gestures or declarations, but paying attention. Noticing. Being there in the quiet ways that mattered. The world outside kept spinning, demanding things from them they weren't ready to give. Auditions, competitions, expectations that sat heavy on their shoulders like stones they couldn't put down. But Thursday nights were sacred. Those hours belonged to them alone. Protected by the unspoken agreement that nothing else mattered when they were sitting on that curb, watching strangers pass by, pretending they had all the time in the world. Jimin would lean his head back and stare at the sky, searching for stars that Seoul's lights had long since erased. "Do you think we'll remember this?" he asked once, his voice soft and distant. "When we're older, and everything's different, do you think we'll remember what this felt like?" Yoongi didn't answer right away. He took a sip of his coffee, letting the cold burn trace down his throat, buying himself a moment to find words that felt true enough. "I don't think I could forget," he said finally, "even if I wanted to." And Jimin turned to look at him then. Really look at him, with eyes that held something too big to name. The streetlight above them flickered, casting shadows that danced across Jimin's face, and for a moment, everything else disappeared. The city, the noise, the future waiting to swallow them whole. It was just them. Suspended in amber, holding on to something they didn't yet know was slipping away. They made promises the way young people do, with absolute certainty, and no understanding of how fragile certainty can be. "We'll always have Thursdays," Jimin said one night. His pinky extended between them like a sacred oath. Yoni hooked his finger around Jimin's, and the gesture felt more binding than any contract, more permanent than anything written in ink. They believed it because they had to, because the alternative was admitting that time doesn't care about pinky promises or the way someone's hand feels in yours or the plans you make at 17, thinking you're invincible, that time is already moving, already pulling them in directions they couldn't see yet. It started small. A missed Thursday because Yoongi had to stay late for a recording session, then another because Jimin got selected for a showcase 2 cities away. They told themselves it didn't matter, that they'd make up for it. That some things were more important than a routine, except routines aren't just habits, they're anchors. And when you start cutting the ropes one by one, you don't notice you're drifting until you're already too far from shore to swim back. Yoongi started spending more time in the studio chasing a dream that demanded everything and gave back only the possibility of more. His eyes grew tired, shadowed with sleepless nights and the kind of exhaustion that lives in your bones. Jimin threw himself into dance with the desperation of someone trying to prove something, though he couldn't say what or to whom. His body became a language of perfectionism, every movement precise and controlled. Beautiful in the way broken things can be when they're trying so hard not to shatter. They still saw each other, of course. They practiced in the same rooms, passed each other in hallways, exchanged smiles that looked right from a distance. But something was changing in the spaces between them, in the silences that used to feel comfortable, but now felt like evidence of something neither wanted to name. There was a Tuesday in October when everything should have been ordinary but wasn't. The air had that sharp autumn quality, cold enough to see your breath, but not cold enough to justify the shiver that ran through Jimin when Yoongi walked past him without really seeing him. They were in the practice room, surrounded by other trainees, the music loud enough to drown out dots. Jimin watched Yoongi's reflection in the mirror, watched the way he moved through choreography, like his mind was somewhere else entirely, somewhere Jimin couldn't follow, and for the first time, Yimin felt the distance, not the physical kind measured in feet or inches, but the kind that grows inside connections when one person starts letting go before the other notices. That night, Jimin sat alone outside the convenience store, 2 iced coffees, sweating condensation onto the curb beside him. It was Thursday. Their Thursday. But Yoongi didn't come. There was no text, no explanation, no acknowledgement that this night had ever meant anything worth remembering. Jimin waited anyway, watching the second coffee go warm then cold, watching strangers walk past living their own stories, completely unaware that his was ending right there on that dirty curb under a flickering streetlight. He waited until the store closed, until the night grew teeth, until even hope got tired and went home. Then he stood, picked up both coffees, and poured them into the trash. The sound they made hitting the bottom of the bin was final, like punctuation at the end of a sentence. He'd been too afraid to finish writing. When Yoongi finally texted 3 days later, the message was simple. Sorry, lost track of time. 5 words that should have been enough but somehow weren't. Jimin stared at his phone screen until the letters started to blur, trying to find hidden meaning in the spaces between characters, some proof that Yoongi understood what had been lost that Thursday night. But there was nothing. Just an apology that felt more like a formality than genuine regret. The kind of thing you say to acquaintances when you accidentally bump into them. Not to someone who used to feel like home. Jimin typed and deleted 7 different responses. It's okay felt like a lie. I missed you felt too vulnerable. We promised felt too desperate. In the end, he sent back a single thumbs up emoji and hated himself for it. Hated how easy it was to pretend everything was fine when everything was quietly falling apart. This is how it happens, he realized, not with screaming or dramatic exits, but with thumbs up emojis and apologies that don't change anything, and the slow, suffocating realization that the person you choose over everyone else is choosing everything over you. The worst part was that nothing was technically wrong. Yoonmi hadn't done anything cruel or unforgivable. He was just busy, just focused, just following the same dream they both signed up for. There was no betrayal to point to, no moment Jimin could circle and say, "This is where you hurt me." It was all so reasonable, so understandable, so completely devastating in its ordinariness. How do you fight against someone's ambition? How do you compete with a future that promises everything you've both worked for? You can't. So you don't. You just watch them drift further away and tell yourself it's fine, it's growth, it's what's supposed to happen. December came with cold that settled deep, the kind that made your chest ache when you breathed too fast, that turned the city into something crystalline and sharp. Jimin started avoiding the practice rooms when he knew Yoongi would be there, not out of anger, but out of self-preservation, because every time their eyes met across the mirror, Jimin felt himself wanting to ask questions he already knew the answers to. Are we okay? Do you miss it? Do you miss me? The answers lived in Yoongi's distracted smiles, in the way he'd check his phone mid-conversation, in how he'd started saying we should catch up soon, like they were old classmates instead of people who'd once known each other's silences better than words. There was one moment, though, brief and sharp as winter air, when Jimin thought maybe he was wrong. It was late, the building nearly empty, just the hum of heating vents and distant traffic. Jimin was leaving the practice room when he nearly collided with Yoongi in the hallway. They both stopped, caught in that awkward dance of trying to move around each other. "Hey," Yoongi said, and his voice carried something Jimin hadn't heard in months. Something soft, something that remembered. "I've been meaning to." But he didn't finish. His phone buzzed, and his eyes dropped automatically to check it, and whatever he'd been about to say dissolved like smoke. "Sorry," he muttered, already typing a response to someone else, someone whose message couldn't wait. "I've got to." He gestured vaguely down the hall, already moving, already gone. Jimin stood there long after Yoongi disappeared around the corner, stood there feeling the weight of all the conversations they'd never have, all the Thursdays that would pass unmarked and unremarkable. This was it, he understood. This was how love dies in real life, not with fire or fury, but with half-finished sentences and empty hallways, with "I've been meaning to" that never becomes "I wanted to say." With people who used to be your entire world reduced to someone you almost bump into and barely recognize. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, indifferent and eternal, and Jimin finally let himself feel it. The end. Not dramatic or cinematic, just quiet and complete. Time had stopped listening to their promises. Stopped caring about what they'd sworn to each other on convenience store curbs under streetlights that flickered like dying stars. And maybe that was the cruelest thing of all. That time just kept moving, kept pulling them apart, and there was nothing either of them could do but let it.